All right, guys. So welcome back to the AVO webinar series. This is the fifth webinar in the series. We're joined today with a special guest, Ryuji. Hi, Ryuji. How's it going?
You. Good. How are you, man?
Good, good. So I'll give you guys a quick introduction for those of you who don't know Ryuji. Ryuji is one of my favorite animal rights activists. He has been active for under a year. And in that time, he has built a really big channel, or a really big page on Facebook, on Instagram. It's called Peace by Vegan. And he has over 23,000 followers in less than a year. And his content is top notch. Like it is, it's amazing. And I know, Ryuji, you come from a background of marketing, and then you kind of switch to education. So you have this, I think, two really important components that come together to probably give you the skills that you have to build such a great following, to have such an impact on non-vegans and on vegans. So I'm excited that you agreed to join the webinar. So thank you for that. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Alex. I run this small nonprofit organization called AVO, Amazing Vegan Outreach. And one of the services that we offer besides workshops and leadership coaching are the webinars. So I'm excited to get this going. Ryuji, I'll hand it off to you. You have control of the presentation, and you know, I might jump in here and there with some thoughts or some questions even. But I'm interested to learn from you as much as everybody else is, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Alex. And to kick this off, so Alex said a second ago that I have over 23,000 followers now. And more than that, what we're going to talk about today is creating impact, because that's what we all want to do right here. Like, if you're joining this webinar right now, I'm guessing that your goal is to make a difference by being vegan. And so what we're going to talk about is how to make a difference leveraging the tool that is social media. And I think it's a very important tool, as we'll get into in a second. But yeah, that's just what I want to say, because you know, it's easy to kind of see these outside metrics like likes and followers and engagement, things like that. But what's more important, and you know, I would show you this, but I'll just tell you about it really briefly, is that every single day I get people who message me telling me about how I've impacted them, whether it be inspiring them, whether it be inspiring them to get active as an activist, whether it be going vegan, or whether, you know, I help them with a problem. For example, I have kids now, because I made a video about this, telling me that they were able to convince their parents that to go vegan thanks to, or they were able to convince their parents to let them be vegan thanks to my content. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. But really, whatever your goal is here, whether it be to make a difference with social media, whether it be to build a brand for yourself, maybe you want to build an influence because you think that's important for your activism, whether you want to create things in real life, like real life events, I think that everything we're going to talk about here is going to support you in doing that. So to jump right in, what you're going to learn in this webinar is, first of all, you're going to learn why social media is important. Why do you use social media? You're going to learn how you can make an impact and how you can reach non-vegan people, because that's a question that I'm guessing a lot of you have, and that's what I ask myself a lot too. We're going to talk about how social media works, because I think it can be very frustrating, and it's like, you know, how do you get your content seen and how do you get it distributed and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to jump into practical tips to grow your impact with real life examples. So here's what I'm going to give you: things that you can start implementing right now to make your post better, to really make an impact and start, you know, building a brand or whatever it is that you want to do. How you can start doing that right now, and I'm going to give you some examples to illustrate that. So it's not just kind of like tips, like fluff tips like that, but you're going to see like how that's actually implemented. And then I'm going to give you a couple examples of some content strategies. So things that I would do in your situation. I'm going to try to you know, because I look at what a lot of you do. Like, I always look at what other people do on social media, and so I'm going to give you examples of things that you can start doing, some actual strategies to implement everything I'm going to teach you. And finally, we're going to talk about how to deal with trolls. Put that in there because everyone's just asking about that. And
I think that's why most people came to this webinar.
Yeah, well, if you want the quick answer, is you know, apply everything that Alex teaches, like everything that's applicable to social media. Like literally, one thing that people don't get about social media is that it's like real life, just with a screen. So first of all, everything that Alex teaches, you can also apply it to social media. But for me, a lot of it is just when there are actual trolls who are there to make your day worse. The main thing that I'm going to say is just, I forget about it as quickly as I can, because it's just a waste of time.
Ryuji, you got to save that for the end, man. Otherwise, people are going to get all the good troll info, and then they're going to jump off. So save the best for last.
All right. So let's jump into it. So why use social media? There are 4 reasons very powerful, and what I think we should all take it very seriously. By the way, it says internet connection. So let me know if you stop hearing me or whatever. But okay, why use social media? The first reason is because you can expand your reach. There are only so many people that you can reach in person. Say you go to a Cube of Truth, or say, you go to whatever event and you talk to people, that's cool, but you're limited by the time that you're there. Through social media, you can reach so many people. For example, I have some screenshots here where someone says that they shared their content with their friends, and then 4 out of the 5 people that they shared it with are going vegan, and 2 of those people are making their households vegan, which is incredible, which is something that I don't even know who this person is, but I've been able to impact them and the people in their lives by creating content on social media. So your reach, your potential reach really expands as an activist. The second thing is you get to scale your activism. So there are a lot of things that we're already doing as activists, and I'm guessing that a lot of our audience here is already active. And if you're not, I would invite you to get active. But what you can do is really scale everything you're doing. For example, say you have an outreach conversation. Well, by having an outreach conversation, you're able to impact one person, which is incredible. It's really, really incredible. But if you now film that conversation and you put it on social media and you're able to get it distributed, then you're able to have that conversation seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people. For example, this is an outreach conversation that I had, and I took out a 1-minute clip from it, and I posted it twice on my Instagram. And between the 2 times, it's been viewed over 100,000 times. So you can really scale what you're already doing, because I'm already doing outreach anyways. So I think that's really cool. The third thing is that you can do it from anywhere. You can literally, what's so great now is that when I first started activism, I would go to an event like a vigil, and after the vigil was over, it would be like, okay, activism time is over for me now. But now what happens is that I go to a vigil, and when I come back, I feel like my activism has just started, and I can really do things to contribute to the movement from anywhere, at any time, at 2 in the morning if I want to, from my bedroom, from like an airport, inside a plane. Like, I can always be doing something, whether it be creating content, posting, engaging, that's related to changing the world. And I think that's really, really cool. And the fourth thing is, if you really, implement the things I'm going to teach you here, you can start creating what I like to call passive impact. And what I mean by that is that for me right now, if I look at what I've built on my Instagram, what's so cool with it is that I can go to bed, and in the 6 to 8 hours I sleep, thousands of people are going to see my videos and be impacted by them. And so if you build the systems, it's almost like, you can create content that works as outreachers for you, that works as activism for you while you're doing other things. So that's something that I think is really, really cool. And this too, what's cool with social media is that, your impact can really grow exponentially over time, which is what I've seen happen in my case. So that's why I think it's really, really powerful. So how can you actually now make an impact? Because it's cool to understand that, okay, we can do this, but how do you actually do this? So the first thing that I want you to think about is think about social media as building a system or building a house where everything that you post, everything that you comment, every single time you put something out on social media, it's going to be like a brick that you're laying to make a house. And the reason I think about it that way is because when you do social media, every time you're doing something new, first of all, it stays there forever. And the other thing too is you're not starting from scratch. You're building on top of what you've already built in the past. And so what happens is that every time you put something out new, whether it be a comment, whether it be a post, or whatever it is, whether it be a story on Instagram, or if you do a live video, every single time you're putting a new brick on this house that you're building. And every single brick is a new opportunity for people to go check out your house. Because a lot of how social media works is that you have all these posts, you have all these comments, and what happens is that someone might see one of your comments somewhere, and then they go click on your profile, and then they see everything that you've done previously. So that's what I mean by creating a house. And the more bricks you lay, the bigger a house gets, the more visibility you get. So again, think about building a house, right? At the beginning, no one's paying attention, but when you really built it up, you can see it from really far away, you can see it across trees. And that's what happens with social media, where your reach, your impact can really grow exponentially if you start thinking about it like that. So yeah, that's what I said earlier. Every brick creates a new opportunity for people to discover your house. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, which I think is really important for us activists to realize, is that there are 2 ways to make an impact. And this is very relevant to social media. And so the first way that you can make an impact, and I got this from the book Tribes by Seth Godin, which I really recommend for anyone who wants to change the world by creating communities and being a leader. But the first way is to expand the tribe, right? So in our case is to make other people vegan. So an organization like Anonymous or the Voiceless, where you go do outreach, that's a great way to expand the tribe, to get other people to go vegan. So that's one way you can make an impact. But another way that you can make an impact is by strengthening the tribe. And doing things to, say, make communication better within the tribe, or to empower the tribe, or to inspire the tribe, right? And that's really important for us as activists too, because for me, I started focusing part of my content towards supporting vegans in whatever they're going through. And I found that that's very powerful, because the feedback that I get is things like, well, people, for example, when they don't have vegan people around them, they're like, you make me feel like I'm not alone. Or, every day when I watch your posts, I remember why I'm vegan. Or, oh, I actually became active because of you. Or I've been able to make this impact in my family because of your content. So, supporting other vegans and other vegan activists is as important. And in the book Tribes, he even talks about how in many cases it can be more important than expanding the tribe. And, for example, that's what Alex is doing really well, is he's really supporting the community that already exists. And that's very, very important.
Ryuji, I have a question for you. Do you find something that I've found maybe a little challenging is trying to do both? Do you suggest that people focus on one, or have you found that you're able to do both? And are there things that you think about to make sure that you're doing that effectively, that you're expanding and strengthening?
Yeah, 100%. I do both. We'll get more into that later. But what I do is, because if you want to post a lot of vegan content, which is what I see a lot of us doing, like, I want to build my social media around veganism. So if you think about that, it's impossible to build a brand or to build something by posting vegan things. And like, you can't think that your audience is not going to be vegan. Like, your audience is going to be vegan. Like, there's just no other way around it. If you want your audience to not be vegan, then you can't post vegan things all the time. It doesn't work like that. So, for me, what I do is that I create a lot of vegan posts, like, for vegan people. And what I'm going to say later, by strengthening the tribe, there are different ways to bring value. So this will all become clear later on. But what I'm able to do is, by creating content to support vegans love my content. And the more they love my content, the more vegan people I have supporting me. And when I put out something that's for non-vegans, then more of them share it with their friends and families. And that's how I get a lot of distribution. And I'm going to talk about how to reach non-vegans in a second. But one really powerful way that you can reach non-vegans is creating content that other vegans can share. And that's the majority of how I reach non-vegans, is by having other people share my content. But the way I get to a position where there are enough vegan people who share my content for it to make an impact is by creating content for vegans. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I get you. I mean, I've seen your content. So if people haven't seen your content, they should definitely check out your page, your Instagram page, Peace by Vegan. I have it linked at the end of the webinar. Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about that right now. So 4 ways to reach non-vegans. So here are 4 ways that you can reach non-vegans, and I'm going to focus on 2 of them here, which are the first 2 that I'm going to talk about. But the first one is make posts for your already existing friends and family. And I'm guessing a lot of you already do this, where you post things, and because you're not trying to build a social media, is just like, your Instagram to, like, kind of catch up with your friends and family. You make posts and you're hoping they'll reach your friends and family. So that's the first way that you can reach non-vegans. The second way, which is what I just talked about, is have others share your content with their friends and family. And this is how I reach non-vegans mostly. And, because I always look at the analytics to see how many times I posted and shared. And this I've seen is a really powerful way to reach non-vegans.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you a question? Since I'm learning from you as we go. What if we asked anyone that's on, let's say, like, people who are on this webinar right now, if they are watching on their laptop, for example, and they're able to, like, take a picture or something like that and post it to, let's say, Instagram right now in their stories or something, and encourage people to come and join the webinar, because the link to register is in my profile. Is it in your profile as well?
It's in my profile as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it's in either of our profiles, Amazing Vegan Outreach or Peace by Vegan. Like, people could literally just, like, take a picture of this, be like, hey, like, go jump on this webinar right now, and people could join in. And a big benefit, I think, too, is that the Q&A section are not posted on YouTube, so anyone that attends live can see that. So would that be an idea of, like, maybe I should have been smarter in asking people to share this webinar, like, when it started, for example?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
Okay, I'm learning from you. It's good.
Yeah, so that's the second thing. The third thing, which this might really be beneficial to some of you to really start thinking about it like this, and I really consider this. And one great way to reach non-vegans is to build a brand online around something that's not veganism, and you cross those 2 things. So if you're a musician and you love music, then I think it would be so enough, and you want to do this, to build a brand around music and capture an audience that's, that loves music or your type of music. And then because they already trust you because of what you've done with them with music, when you talk about things that are related to veganism, then you're going to have already built trust with them, which is going to have them be much more open to what you're going to offer them. And I think this is one of the most powerful things you can do. I really consider doing this. The reason I didn't do it myself is because I'm just so passionate about veganism that I couldn't consider doing it around something else. But if you do have another passion that you're as passionate about as veganism, I'd really encourage you to go down this route. It can be really powerful. And by the way, any of these things that I'm talking about here, what we're going to talk about later, the practical tips, is going to support you in doing any one of these, because the principles are basically the same. You just have to switch out the specific examples I'm going to give you, but all the principles apply to everything. So that's the third thing. And the fourth way is to pay for targeted ads and targeted ads. Not target ads, but targeted ads. And this is what you're going to see me doing a lot more in the following months, because it's so powerful. One thing that's cool about social media is that now paying for ads is underpriced. Like paying for ads on Instagram or Facebook is really underpriced, and at the same time, you can really target them. So you could theoretically, and this is the type of thing I'm going to start doing, make content that's specifically for people who already love animals, and then run that piece of content as an ad against people who are fans of the dodo. Or you could literally create a piece of content around how eating animal products is the leading cause of heart disease, and then run that piece of content as an ad against people who are searching for things that are related to heart disease. And so that, I think, it could be such a powerful way to reach people. And I really delved into this, but that's where you're going to see me doing it. If you follow what I do over the months, that's what I'm going to start doing.
I just received a video from a buddy of mine, another activist, Dave Ramsden, and it was a Gary Vee Instagram post, and it was exactly on this topic. How like he goes on and on about how people should be using these ads more, and they're like significantly underpriced right now. And for just a few bucks, you can actually get messages, targeted messages out there. He's speaking more towards businesses, but I mean, if somebody's willing to, to drop $5 or $10, you can like you're saying, you can actually target ads specifically at a demographic, and it's really powerful. I need to do that better, but I'm also not creating enough like content for non-vegans. I tend to create all my content for vegans. Yeah, maybe we can chat after about that. And actually, where would you suggest people go to learn how to do that? Do you have a suggestion on how to like build ads and how to target them properly?
Yep. YouTube and Google, just like search it. I mean, there's so many free resources. Like targeted ads is one of the things that I'm not as knowledgeable about because I just haven't done it enough. But with all these things, there are two components to which I think is really key to talk about. First is understanding the theory. So even for how to target ads, you can just do a Google search or a YouTube search and find plenty of people explaining it and like really in depth. So the information is out there. The information is easy to come by. What's more difficult, and this applies to everything else as well that we're going to talk about, is actually implementing it. And even the practical tips I'm going to give you, it's kind of easy to understand them, but to really start to be able to really implement them in an effective way, it's going to take a lot of practice. So that's kind of how I would suggest people to go about it. But you can learn it. Like all these things, what I really want to emphasize is that using social media is a skill that you can learn. Same way that outreach is a skill that you can learn, using social media is, you can learn it. It's a skill. Like I didn't, like before I did Peace by Vegan, I never posted on social media, like never. Yeah. But I was just, what? I think this is important. So let me just learn how to do this. And I just learned how to do it.
Yeah. I just want to echo too, there's the way that I've learned everything from Final Cut Pro to Adobe Lightroom to all these different apps, which normally people like had to go to school. Now, I obviously don't use them as well as people who are properly trained in them, but I use them well enough, and it was just through YouTube videos. Like information is at our fingertips, so we should definitely use it.
Yeah, 100%. And like you just mentioned earlier, but for anyone who's interested in delving more into the topic of social media, I would really encourage you to check out this guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. He goes by Gary V, Garyvee, everywhere, and he talks a lot about branding and marketing. And if you look at the majority of what I've done, I've probably learned like 90% of even what I'm sharing with you today, but what I've done, like I've learned 90% of it from him. So he's a really great resource to learn about any of this. And yeah, to move on, how does social media work? This is, if you get anything out of this presentation, this is what I want you to get out of it, because if you really take the time to understand this and let this land, everything else, first of all, this is going to give context to everything else I'm going to say, so everything else will make a lot more sense if you really understand this. But more importantly, you'll be able to figure things out for yourself if you really understand these principles. So how does social media work? The first idea to think about and realize, and the second thing is actually just another way of saying this, but is the idea that social media is for consumers, not creators. Social media is created for the masses of people who go on Instagram to scroll through their feeds and check out what their friends are about. Social media was not created for people who want to be influencers, or social media was not created for people who want to make a difference using social media. It's not optimized for us, because if it was, then Instagram would start pushing out slaughterhouse footage and all these things to make the world a better place to other people. But that's not how it works, because that just wouldn't work, because then no one would be on social media in the first place. But it's really key to understand this, because a lot of times people say things like, well, people should really look at this. People should really see this. But I mean, it's cool to think about it like that, but the problem is thinking about it like that doesn't solve the problem that people are not seeing it. So we have to start understanding that social media was made for the people who are consuming it, not for us as people who are trying to use it to do something. So that's the first thing. And the way that you can implement this is to create content your audience wants to see, not what you want them to see. And this is super, super key. And this might be difficult for people here, because you're like, well, like people don't want to hear about veganism. But that's not quite true. Even if you look at you go to a Cube of Truth, you'll find that there are plenty of people who are open. But what's really important is that you create content that your audience wants to see. And if you don't do this, I'll tell you what happens. First, what happens is that on social media, unlike in real life, see, in real life, when you talk to someone, you can theoretically preach veganism, and they might not leave out of being polite, because it's like an actual face-to-face situation. But on social media, if people don't want to see your post, they're going to scroll right past it real fast, and they just don't have to consume it. So just because you post something, oftentimes as activists, we say like, well, it's important for us to post this. Well, what's important is not that we post it. What's important is that people actually see it. So when we think about it from that perspective, we really have to start considering that it's not just because we post something that people are automatically going to see it, right? So if we post things that people don't want to see, first of all, they're going to scroll past it. And what happens is that as people scroll past your content more and more, it's just going to stop showing up in their feeds. Like if you've been posting a lot of vegan content and say a lot of graphic footage, and then you've noticed that even though you have 700 followers, you get 12 likes per post, and none of your vegan friends seem to get it, it's probably because they've scrolled past your post so many times that your posts are not even showing up in their feeds, because you've created content that they didn't want to see. So it's really, really important for us to understand this concept. And everything I'm going to say moving forward is going to be more or less an illustration of this. So jumping right into what I think is going to bring you a lot of value in this presentation, and it's 5 practical tips. I know it said 6 in the outline, which I forgot to change, but it's 5 practical tips, things that you can implement right now. And these are, some of these are kind of bigger concepts. Some of these are little tweaks that you can make to things that you're already doing to just start making your posts better and start getting more engagement, start making more of an impact. So the first one is to post consistently. If you want to take social media seriously, which, by the way, I didn't spend too much time on this, but when I think about what we can achieve through social media, I think that for us as activists to not take it seriously and to not have a serious plan as to how we're going to leverage this tool to create a difference, I think if we're not doing that, we're not doing nearly as much as we could. So I think it's really important for us to take it seriously. But the first thing is just to post consistently, because when you post consistently, couple things. First of all, you get to learn a lot faster what works and doesn't work, because like I said, social media is a skill. So the more you do it, the faster you're going to learn. And then the other thing is you also get to be in people's minds. Once in a while, I get a message from someone who says that I'm their favorite vegan account or their favorite vegan activist, which if you actually stop and think about that, that's outrageous. And it shouldn't, that shouldn't happen. But part of the reason why that happens is because I just post so frequently and I post every day that people just see my face every day. So in people's minds, when they think of a vegan activist, like there are literally some people that when they think vegan activist, they'll think about me before they think about Earthling Ed, just because I post more consistently. And you can think about this in the community in terms of building a brand, but also in terms of like, like reaching your friends and family, where if you post more consistently, then your content is going to seem a lot more relevant to them when it actually pops up. If you've ever been a fan of someone, you probably noticed that the more you watch someone's content, the more you want to watch it even more. Or with a TV show, like if you watch a TV show, the more you watch it, the more you want to watch it even more. So it's kind of like a similar thing here. So posting consistently is really, really important. And even if you start doing just this, I can promise that your results will just start exploding on social media. The second thing is document your journey in a way that provides value. That is something that you're already doing probably, is you're probably documenting the things that you're already doing. But the second part of this is very key, in a way that provides value. So what I mean by this is, for example, if you go to a Cube of Truth and you have a photo of you at a Cube of Truth, instead of writing what I see a lot of people doing, which is something like, went to a Cube of Truth today, and you just kind of talk about it, and you kind of talk to like other activists, and you just kind of say what happens, or be like, yeah, we want to make a difference today, or something like that, that's wonderful. But you could actually take that opportunity to write something that brings value to people. So what I mean by that is, for example, say, oh, I went to a Cube of Truth today. This is what I learned. I learned this about outreach. I tried doing this thing that Alex taught me from Amazing Vegan Outreach, and it did really well. And in that way, you're able to provide value. Or if the majority of your audience is not vegan, you could go to a Cube of Truth and be like, and start the caption by saying something like, do you know what a Cube of Truth is? The reason that we stand here and do this is because of this, and educate people. So you're actually not just like taking a photo of your life or whatever, but really putting efforts into framing it in a way that might bring value to your specific audience.
Ryuji, if you think about also like, if you think about what we know about what people find interesting, I think storytelling is really powerful. And I know I sometimes forget this, but thinking just based on exactly what you said, like talking about a Cube of Truth post, for example, I know that probably one of the highest engagements I received on a post was when I told a story about these guys that were laughing at the cube, and I kind of I just told the story about how we interacted and what ended up happening, and people found that so much more interesting than the times that I've just kind of posted a picture of the cube and talked about what the tally was and just kind of like the facts and data. They prefer the stories so I know that I found that to be true. Yeah.
And that's so powerful, because think about it, like I literally remember that post. Like I actually remember that post, and it actually brought me value in my life. And I'm sure it inspired many people to get past like similar situations they might be in. So yeah, so document your journey in a way that provides value. The third thing is using relevant hashtags. And I'm saying this is more kind of relevant to Instagram, I guess, because that's where we use more hashtags. But the reason I say this is because sometimes like people will be like, oh, let me post a slaughterhouse footage and put hashtag bacon. Well, that's kind of cool in theory, but I'll tell you why that has a very low chance of working. First of all, unless you've built a significant brand for yourself and you get enough engagement, your post is never going to get in the top post of that hashtag, meaning that no one is ever going to see it from that hashtag. So that's the first thing. Like, for example, if at this point Earthling Ed posted something and then put hashtag bacon, that might actually work. But for most of us, it probably wouldn't work, especially for big hashtags like bacon. Like there's just so many posts that like even if I post something with hashtag bacon, like probably no one will see it from hashtag bacon. Chances are very high that would happen. And then the second thing is, and there are ways to make this work, but oftentimes like if we do that, we're talking to unqualified leads. We're trying to talk to people who are there, and they're trying to go on social media because remember, social media is for the consumers. And so if they scroll past and they're trying to find pictures of bacon and they see something that's just, kind of interrupting them, well, that's cool from our perspective. But from their perspective, a lot of times, like they're just not going to enjoy it. They're just not going to consume it anyways. So it's always important to think about it from the audience perspective. And when I say relevant hashtags, I mean things like, for example, because I'm very clear on who my audience is. So I use hashtags that are relevant to animal lovers. Not all of them are necessarily like vegan hashtags. And so instead of reaching people who are probably not open to veganism, at least in that moment, like in the moment where people are searching hashtag vegan, they're probably not searching for something vegan. I'm able to reach a lot of people who are already open. Like I reach a lot of people who are pre-vegan. That's why like one of the most common stories I get about people who go vegan through my content is, your content was the last push for me to go vegan, because I'm specifically targeting people who are already kind of interested in what I'm doing. And also the other thing too is that by using relevant hashtags, this is a long-term play, because by using relevant hashtags and understanding how search works in different social media networks, what that's going to allow you to do is allow you to get discovered. And the more you get discovered, that's how you're going to grow, and that's how you're able to like build an audience over time, which is a critical part of making an impact. Like for me, like I know so many people, like when I look at my posts, a lot of people see my posts from hashtags, and a lot of my followers come from seeing my posts in those relevant hashtags. And that's how I'm able to grow my brand, and that's how I'm able to grow my impact as well. So starting to use relevant. Yeah.
Another question for you. I'm thinking about like my background in sales, and thinking about like a sales pipeline or a sales funnel, where you have like, you have all of these like completely unqualified leads, and you're trying to kind of, narrow them down to find those people that, might engage more on your posts, or the pre-vegans sort of thing. So what I hear you saying is that when you use more relevant hashtags, you're actually kind of addressing the people lower in that funnel. Whereas if you use a bacon hashtag, you're kind of just at the most general level. In fact, you're probably talking to people who, they're as unqualified as possible. Like they're not looking for vegan content. So are you suggesting that we target people who might be veg curious? And is there any room? So that's one question. Like, should we be targeting the veg curious? Is there enough of that like low hanging fruit to go after? And then the second question is there room, and is there ways to target that like top part of the funnel, completely unqualified leads?
Yeah, I think absolutely. For me, I go more for qualified leads, because I think there's so many people in the world who are already open to being vegan. And I'm like, let's get those people first. But if you do want to target people, and if you do want to run ads against people who love bacon, I think there's a way to do it. But the way to do it is to be very, very empathetic to where they're coming from, and really understanding how their mind works, and creating content for them in a way that's going to bring them value, not in a way that like, I want you to see this. So what I mean by that is, for example, you could target bacon lovers with, say, a piece of content that's around like a vegan version of a bacon, and then talk about how it tastes the same, but it's much healthier. So that someone who loves bacon might get value from that, because they're like, you know what, I love bacon. I might want to try this product. And oh my God, like it tastes the same, and it's actually healthier for me. So if you do it in a way that actually brings them value, I think there's a way to do it. But to do it in a confrontive way, I think is very difficult. A
quick thing that I just saw the other day as well. I was watching a video by Tobias Lanehart, and he had this slide that said, people who care about animals eat more plants, for example. But then he also like switches it around. Like the next slide just goes whoop, and he goes, this is also true as well. People who eat more plants also are able to care more about animals, right? So, I know that we tend to approach this. I know I tend to approach this like strictly on like the moral question, and it's kind of, I see a lot of content being shared from activists on the moral aspect of it. But I love what you're saying there, especially when you're addressing that top part of the funnel. If you choose to do that, is maybe they're not ready yet, and maybe they don't need to be hit with that like strong like slaughterhouse footage, like this is ethically wrong type of thing. Maybe they need that introduction into trying those plant-based bacons. And then when they come across that footage, you're like, holy shit, yeah, I can enjoy this other bacon, and I don't have to contribute to that, and they're more open to it, right? So just ways to think about it strategically, and not so dogmatically maybe.
Yeah, and by the way, and there's so many ways to run campaigns. Like for example, if you made like, see on Facebook, if you made like a 10-minute video about the health benefits of a plant-based alternative to bacon, and you have, and then what you can do is you run that as an ad against people who love bacon. Then what you can do is you can see the people who have, say, watched like 60% of that video, and then you can run an ad against them now with, say, a picture of a pig or something, and you can retarget those people. So you know that like you can do things like there's so many things you can do on social media, but it really comes to understanding where your audience is at, and making things that bring value to your audience, or your content is just not going to get consumed in the majority of cases. And the fourth tip I want to give here for practical tips is engage with your audience. And that means answer everyone. Answer comments, answer DMs. I think this is just so important. One thing that's, I forgot who said this, but someone said something that we often forget about social media is that it's social. And so if people take the time to write a comment on your post, then shouldn't it be common courtesy to just answer? And, you know, and for me, if you look at how I've been able to build my brand, a huge part of that is just because I take so much time and effort to engage with people, and I answer all my comments and I answer all my DMs, and I get a lot of them. And like now I get a lot of them, but I still make an effort to really answer, because it just matters, especially if you're trying to do something around veganism and capture a vegan crowd. You're going to be able to really build a community that trusts you, that's going to help you with things like, even when you post a thing that's for non-vegans, if you've engaged with them, they're that much more likely to share your post because they already like what you're doing. And, you know, and we're going to go into more detail later, but for example, you know, now people might be asking themselves the question, well, you know, like, do I still answer people who post like mean comments or like trolls and things like that? I think one thing that's important to understand is that if people have a genuine concern, I'll always answer. If people are just there to make my day worse, sometimes I won't answer. But I mean, you still can, but the general rule is just engage with your audience, answer everyone, and build a community. That's going to really, really help you out on social media.
A few questions that came up, or yeah, maybe two that I see here that are pretty relevant to this. Going back to point 3 on the hashtags. So one question is there an amount of hashtags that's best to stick below? Like, can you use too many hashtags? Could it damage the engagement of the post if you use irrelevant hashtags, I guess?
It can, because what happens is that if you use irrelevant hashtags, then like, okay, these social networks are really, really smart. They're getting smarter and smarter every single day, right? So if you use hashtags, and this is conceptually, if you use hashtags that are not relevant, say for example, I post a picture of a pig and I put like hashtag car mechanic. Like, people who are searching car mechanic, that post is not relevant to them at all. And so Instagram knows that people who see it through that hashtag are just scrolling past it. So in their minds, the way that translates is, okay, this post is not as valuable. So I never use irrelevant hashtags. I only use relevant hashtags, and I use as many as I can.
Here's the second question related to relevant hashtags. Is what would be a relevant hashtag? Like, can you give an example of some relevant hashtags that you use on your, let's say, your posts that are targeting non-vegans, like the pre-vegans? What are some hashtags that you kind of consistently use? And of course, there might be other ones that are more relevant to that post, but are there some that you're kind of like consistently using?
Yeah, actually like, and this is something that I probably should experiment with more. I always use the same, I have like 30 hashtags that I always use. And in that hashtag, in those hashtags, I have the list right now. Like, I have hashtags that are really relevant to veganism, things like vegan activist or vegan for the animals, PETA, vegan AF, like stuff like that. I have things that are relevant for activists, so things like the Save Movement, Anonymous for the Voiceless. Mm-hmm. And then like I have things that, you know, are slightly more towards, like, because a lot of my content, and this is because my content is for animal lovers. Like, I talk a lot about the ethics. So I have hashtags like animal friends. I used to use animal lovers, but there are so many posts in that thing that, like, I don't think I get enough engagement to be relevant there.
I was going to ask you about that. Is it better to use less popular hashtags so that your posts stay within like, it's more of a niche hashtag as opposed to like whatever animal lovers that'll have 20 million, you know, like basically as soon as you post, 10 seconds later, your post is already gone.
Yeah, 100,000%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100,000.
Yeah, I don't do that. I think I need to kind of become more niche so that people that are searching for that will find this content. Otherwise, if they just search vegan, they're not going to see your stuff because it's just gone.
Yeah, because we have to think about why we're using the hashtags. Like, what is the point of using a hashtag? The point of using a hashtag on a platform like Instagram is to get discovered. That's the point of it. The point is that you somehow pop up somewhere, and then if your post is good enough, then that person might go onto your profile, see your other posts, and then hopefully follow you. That's the point. So that's why I use relevant hashtags. Like, because when people use hashtags like hashtag bacon, they're trying to use hashtags as a way to distribute their content, which I don't think is the best way to distribute content.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's good. It's really good.
Yeah. And the fifth tip, which is on a separate slide, is a question that I always ask myself whenever I post anything. And the first question I ask myself is this: who is my audience? I'm crystal clear on who my audience is when I post, and you can see it in the type of post that I make, even like the way the thumbnail is if I make a video, or like even in the caption of my post, you can see that I'm very, very clear on who my audience is. And the phrase that I use to kind of think about this is this phrase: people like us do things like this. This is something that Seth Godin said, and he said that if you want to create change within a community, this is a good framework to think about it through, right? So for example, people like us do things like this could look something like animal lovers don't eat animals. And you don't have to say it straight up like that, but I always think, okay, my audience is vegans, my audience is people who already love animals, people who already care. So I'm making content that directly speaks to them. The reason I'm saying this is because I see so many posts, the majority of vegan posts on social media, they're trying to do something that I call putting out fires, where it's almost like they're confronting the haters and the trolls. They say things like, they have a picture of a slaughterhouse. They're like, oh, do you still think that, your taste buds are more important than their lives? And it's like very confrontive. And even if you think about it from an outreach perspective, and this is something that Alex talks about a lot, it's like, I feel like a lot of people through their posts, what it's doing is it's creating arguments and debates. And that's not at all what I recommend doing. It's not at all what I do. And it doesn't mean to not educate. It just means to educate in a way where, I like, and really, if you come from that place, you'll see that the way that you post content and the way that you write about your content is going to tremendously change. Because in my mind, when I write a caption, I assume that the people who are reading that caption are open. That's my audience. I'm not trying to convince unqualified leads, which is what I see 99% of people doing, trying to convince people like, oh, like, you say like you love bacon and blah, 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 but you're wrong. Like, that's not what I'm doing. For me, I'm picturing like a room full of people who already love animals, who already care. And I'm like, yo, check this out. Like, you might have never seen this before. And I talk to them in a way where, and that's why it's like, I'm not at all debatey. I'm not at all, I don't create arguments because I'm clear on who my audience is. But this is also specific to you. So for example, if your audience is mainly your friends and family, then be empathetic towards that too. And then think about people like us. What are your friends and family like? What do they like? And do things like this and really try to create content that's going to bring value to them. This is really specific to everyone. For me, my audience is vegans and pre-vegans and people who love animals. But for you, it might be your friends and family. But it's really important that you ask yourself, who is your audience?
Ryuji, if I can just top up on that as well. What I recognize from when I first went vegan until now, I mean, first of all, my audience has changed. So now within the past year, I'm focusing specifically on vegans and animal rights activists. But when, even a few years ago, when my content started changing, like at first I was just like, I got to get all of this like horrible stuff out there. People have to see this. People have to see all of the death and the suffering and the gory pictures. And like, I got like virtually no engagement from non-vegans. I noticed people started unfollowing me. I even sometimes got some like nasty messages from like people that I knew, and then like that was it. Never heard from them again. But as like I started like softening up my approach online, I started getting more people like randomly reaching out, be like, hey, you know what? Thank you for that. I've been following you for this long. By the way, and I don't know if you're going to mention this, but one common question that I get from people, or one common frustration that I get, is that when they do share content, now I'm not sure about the quality of the content that they're putting out, but when they do provide content online, that they don't get engagement from non-vegans. But what I've recognized about social media for myself as well is that if Ryuji, you know this better than I do probably, but if I go and I'm constantly looking at people's content and clicking on it and seeing stuff, even if I'm not liking or commenting, my social media channels know that, and they continue to show me content from those people. So I would get messages from people that I hadn't spoken to in 10 years being like, hey, you know what? I really want to go vegan and I've been following your posts forever and, I appreciate it. And I'm like, you never like or comment. I had no idea this person was seeing anything, So not to be discouraged if people aren't commenting, but then also applying your tactic, your suggestions, which is creating content for them specifically, not for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100,000%. And what you said there is really important, is because social media, I look at it as like a long-term thing where you're building systems. What I talked about at the beginning, building a house, right? Where you're getting to people in the long term. It's not so much like trying to get people with like this one post. For me, it's more about how can I build this repertoire of posts and this whole thing that I've done like over a long period of time, and how can that impact people? It's like my entire body of work. So that's how I think about it. And when you chip away at people like little by little by little, then I think that can be really powerful, like that experience that you had. And so the question I always ask myself about my content is, why would they consume this? Like, why? Like, first of all, why is someone gonna, when they scroll through their feed, because you have to understand that on social media, there's only one feed. You're competing against everyone. Like, you are competing against models and celebrities, and like, you know, like you're competing against these people for people's attention. So when people scroll through their social media, they could look at, you know, your post, or they could look at like a pretty picture from a model, right? They have the option to do that. So we have to consider that. And we have to consider, why would they consume this? Why is someone going to stop at this post? Why is someone going to stop to read the caption? And I always think about that, because like I said at the beginning, people are not going to consume something because you want them to consume it. It's not because you're like, I want you to see this slaughterhouse footage, that people are going to see it. So you have to ask yourself, why would they want to watch it? And when you start thinking like that, you start getting really creative with the way that you package your content, with the content itself that you're creating. And you get to really, like I said, create something over the long term instead of trying to get people with just one thing, right? So that's what I said, like, have a hook. With my videos, you can see that more and more I'm experimenting with this, where a lot of my videos, they have like a visual hook at the beginning, because Instagram, when you scroll, videos start, but they have no sound. So I have a visual hook. And I'm always very clear. I always think about what's going to make people stop at this post. Why are people going to actually consume this? And I always think about this. And the other thing, like,
speaking about hooks, I just want to share what I found that out maybe like, I don't know, a year or two into my video. So I used to make a lot of videos for the Save Movement, a lot of visual videos, and they would start off like really slowly with the Save Movement logo coming up and stuff like that. And like, what I realized is, like, I started thinking, like, how do I consume content when I'm scrolling through, right? If a video doesn't capture my attention in the first, like, and I'm not even exaggerating, 1 second, I might give it two or 3 seconds, like, at most. But like, the first thing that pops up, if it doesn't look interesting, boom, it's just gone, you know? And so what I started doing was trying to put like whatever the most compelling video clip from that visual at the beginning, and then going into it. So it hooked people and people wanted to see it. And I think one of the most successful visual videos that I made starts off with an activist getting punched in the face, like immediately, just like a punch in the face from a truck driver. And then the video starts, so then it builds back up to that point. So anyway, I just wanted to like share, like, we have to think, I mean, obviously drama and violence capture stuff, but it could be like a really cute image or something, but it has to like hook people in the first few seconds. Otherwise it's gone.
No, 100%. And you bring up a great point too, which is, I think like you just did, I think about how I consume content, and I use that to make better content. I always think about what would make me stop. Like, I think about whose stories do I watch, whose content do I enjoy, and why do I enjoy it? And then I try to do things like that.
Yeah. What do people like seeing? People like seeing drama. They like seeing cute animals. They like seeing children. I know that. Like, I think my most successful outreach video was I think it got close to 300,000 views, the 12-year-old kid. Right. So I put that in the box. I put 12-year-old, like, really big, and it makes people like interested, you know, because it's something a little different. So I think you do that really well too, is kind of those title bars and really catchy kind of titles for your videos as well help.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, you know, one of the ways I like to think about this is that when you're making content for social media, you're not making a feature film. You're making like a video that people are going to scroll past in a feed. Because I see so many people doing, like we just said, like when they'll post a video and it'll start out with like a 5-second title. And I'm like, you realize that like no one saw your video. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't even watch the videos. Like, it's like, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, and I just don't even watch it, right? And I'm like, yeah. No.
Well, you're judging that from that, like, if somebody put in a 5-second title, you know that they're not like, whatever, social media savvy, and you know this video is probably, you're making a judgment, it's probably not going to be that interesting, right? We want, like, sadly, we consume social media, especially on, like, I find on Facebook and especially Instagram, in short, tiny little chunks, right? So that's why I love your videos. They're just like, they're punchy. And even when it's a longer video, you have these like breaks in it. You have those like swipe to the next story. Like, it's genius. It's so well done. But my suggestion to people is, from what I've learned, the shorter, the better. Like, it's not about putting as much content as you can into it. It's about taking the best and making it like a 30-second video, I think, is probably better than a 3-minute video. More people will see it, and you can probably deliver the same message.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing too is, you know, don't assume your audience knows anything. And this especially, I think, can really help you out if your audience is your friends and family, where oftentimes I see people posting things And it's like, when I read the caption, I'm like, you're kind of assuming that people have seen Dominion. Like, you're kind of assuming that people should know that like male chicks are ground up in the egg industry. And I'm like, I never assume that people know, even if you've posted about it like 20 million times before. Like, I promise you, like, for me, like, one thing that I've been yelling about on my social media is this thing called the Rancher Advocacy Program, which is the program that transitions ranches and farms into vegan businesses. And I've been yelling about it. But I met in person people who follow all my content, who are at the top of my list when they watch my stories. And they're like, I love what you do. What you're doing is so cool. I'm like, have you heard of the Rancher Advocacy Program? And they're like, I'm not sure, maybe. And I'm like, I've been yelling about this. So never assume that just because you've posted something or you've yelled about it on social media, people are going to know. Like, you just got to repeat things over and over again. And if you read all my captions, you'll see that like I explain everything in a way that's very accessible to anyone, from for someone who's already vegan to someone who's not been vegan and never thought about it. I just really lay it out in a way that's really, really clear. And I do that because I'm like, if someone does stumble upon this that's curious about veganism and doesn't know anything, this would provide them a lot of value because I'm not assuming that they know anything. So that's something that I think would really help you out. Now I know we're like going over time. What do you want to do about this?
You know what, like, I noticed you have a few more slides. Let's go through the slides quickly. And we still have we still have 35 minutes left, and we have 9 questions in the Q&A right now. So we should be okay. And if people have some more questions, throw them in there. But we should be okay. Yeah.
Sounds good. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is 6 ways to bring value. And these are ways that you can make your posts better so that people actually want to consume it. So whether or not your audience is vegan or not vegan or whatever, you can apply these concepts to make better posts so you can start making more of an impact, so you can start getting a following and all the things that you want to do. So the first way is to educate. I put a post here by Amy because I think she does that like way better than I do. But Amy makes incredible posts where, you know, she makes it very clear. And this too, like, look how easy this is to consume, right? It says, are oysters vegan, with a downwards arrow, and she has like a slideshow of like different pictures. And then she just explains it and she educates people on whether or not oysters are vegan. And that brings a lot of value to people, because if someone doesn't know that and they want to learn about it, it's a perfect way for people to learn about it. So first way is to educate people. The second
by
way,
the way, sorry, Ryuji, just one quick thing.
Yeah.
I never heard of Amy, unfortunately. I just noticed that she follows me, so I just followed her back. But one thing that you can do is look at what other people are doing and copy it. Like if you see something that's effective, do a similar thing. Like, you're not ripping somebody off. I think I learn a lot from other people. So feel comfortable and be like, oh, this person does this really well. I'm going to do things as well, because your audience is different than Amy's audience, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yep. The second way that you can bring value to people, and this is specifically for if you have a vegan audience. So if you're a vegan activist watching this webinar right now, and perhaps a lot of people who follow you are vegans or vegan activists, then an incredible way to bring them value is to create content that they can share with their non-vegan friends and family. And like I said, this is the majority of way that I get distribution to non-vegans, where I make posts that you can tell that the post is supposed to be for non-vegans. And then people may be confused because like, oh, like but your audience is vegan. But I'm like, yeah, but like a lot of them are sharing it. For example, this post that I made about how vegans are extreme, and I kind of lay out the hypocrisy of why it's weird for vegans to be called extreme, has been shared 1.2 thousand times just with like their share thing. That's either people have sent it to people, and that doesn't include, you know, people who have maybe showed it to people in real life, or people who have tagged their friends and family in the comment section. So you can see, like, right here, like, even through that, like, you know, I don't know who those 1.2 thousand people are, and I don't know who their audience is, but I can guess that, you know, like, that has reached like a lot of people like through that. So that's a great way that you can bring value to people, especially if your content is really good, because I think there's a real scarcity of content that's really, really good to share with non-vegan friends and family. And so I think that if you really start thinking about how can I create content that's easily shareable, that's a great way to, like I said earlier too, like, scale your impact, because then you're not just sharing with people in your life, you're having other people share with people in their lives as well. The third way to bring value to people is to inspire others. And and this is probably the main way that I'm personally making an impact, where I inspire people to speak up for the animals, or to go to events, to become active, et cetera, et cetera. For example, I already used this example earlier, but when I post outreach conversations, and if you do this, you might have this experience too, you know, I have a lot of people who are being like, wow, you're so inspiring and stuff like that, because I think on one hand, they see that if they want to speak up, they could do it too. They're like, wow, it's so cool that you're doing that. And then the other thing too is they're like, you know what, like, this is showing me that the world is changing, and it inspires them to be hopeful, or to maybe go speak up for themselves. Like I have a lot of people hit me up, be like, yo, like, thanks for watching your content. I talk to my family, and like my sisters are going vegan and stuff like that, because I've inspired them to do that. So that's a great way that you can bring value to people. The fourth way that you could bring value to people is to relate to what other people are going through. And, I put this post that's not relevant to veganism, but the reason I put this post is because this is such a simple post that like literally anyone could do, where I wrote, you don't have to fit in this New Year's Eve. And the reason I did that was because I never liked New Year's, and I had this whole thing about it. You can read the caption if you're interested. But the point is, I was like, I'm going through this, and I've always felt like I'm alone. And there's this saying that the more personal the issue is, the more universal it is, probably. So I put that post out there. I wrote a whole caption on my experience, and I had a lot of people relating to that. And I've done that too with things that vegans go through, like, for example, the pain of watching animal cruelty and not being able to deal with that, or, having the people around you not accept you, or friends and family, or that kind of thing, right? Things that we all go through. And I think a lot of times as vegans, we focus a lot on, let me try to create content for the non-vegans. But we forget that as vegans, we all go through these things, and us supporting each other, going through these things and sharing our experiences can be a really, really powerful way to bring value to people and empower others to make change in their lives and in their communities around them as well. So relating to others is really, really, really powerful. The fifth thing is to solve people's problems. As vegans, there are a lot of things, and as non-vegans too, by the way. So, I use this specifically for if your audience is vegan and stuff like that, but these principles apply to anything you want to do. So, for example, one of the main messages that I get personally is people being like, yo, Ryuji, I want to go vegan, but my parents don't let me. And I get that so much. It's crazy. And so I decided to make a video about it. And after I made a video about it, back to bringing value to your audience, this post is literally it's like an 8-minute Instagram video with you slide through 8 times. And when I made it, I was like, I can't believe I'm putting a 8-9-minute video on Instagram. This is insane. But the reason I did it was because it combines a lot of things I talked about earlier. For example, being aware of who my audience is. I'm like, this post very clearly is for people who want to be vegan, but their parents don't support them. It's for them. So everyone else probably doesn't bring them value. It's okay. But the people who it's going to bring value to is going to bring tremendous value to them if they actually do choose to consume it. And because this is such a widespread problem. And I've actually had people message me, kids message me after seeing this video being like, yo, I watched your video and now my parents are cool with me being vegan. It's so cool. And so that can be really, really powerful if you take the time to solve problems that people have. And if you want to do this for your non-vegan friends and family, you can talk about it. For example, talk about it from a point of view of how to make food really quickly. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but if you have a lot of busy people in your life, be like, oh, this is like a 3-minute recipe and it just happens to be vegan, but you're solving people's problems. So that's a great way that you can bring value to people. So now what I want to share with you very briefly is a game plan. The kind of thing that I would do, this is partly what I've done, partly what I would do. I'm guessing that a lot of you might be interested in using social media to reach your friends and family more efficiently. So that's kind of what I want to talk about here. And the first idea I want to talk about is this concept of jab, 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 right hook. I took this from the title of a book by Gary Vaynerchuk that's called Jab, 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 Right Hook, which I should have put in the slide, but I didn't. And in that book, he talks about marketing on social media. And he talks about it from the point of view of selling. So what he says is when you want to sell something to people, instead of, trying to sell it and sell it and sell it, be like, buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing. What you should do is provide value first. So that's the jab, 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 provide value, give, give, give. And then once you've given a lot of value to your audience, then the right hook is ask for people to buy your thing. So say you're trying to sell cars, just a random example, you're trying to sell cars. Educate people on cars, educate people on how to buy cars, et cetera, give a lot of value. And then at some point be like, oh, by the way, I have cars for sale. And then people are more likely to come buy from you. So how do you apply this to veganism? Well, for me, I do it in a certain way. But for you, for example, if you're trying to reach your non-vegan friends and family, one thing that I would stop doing for sure is to only post about veganism and only post things that are animal rights related. Because if you think about it, if you're posting slaughterhouse footage or if you're posting things that are very vegan heavy, that's kind of like asking people to buy something from you, right? So Alex talks about, for example, building rapport with people. If they're not interested in that necessarily, then that's taking a lot out of that rapport bank account that you've built with them because they just might not want to see that. So if you keep posting about that, it's very similar to imagine someone say something that you really don't care about, like socks. imagine like someone in your life just started posting about socks all the time. And, and like all their posts is about like, you should use these socks, stop using these socks, this is what you should do. Well, you're probably just not gonna care about that, and you're gonna stop consuming their content. And people might say, like, but with veganism it's different, because of course this animal rights is not socks. It's really important. What's important to understand is that from a subjective perspective, people perceive it the same way. Like, there are many people that to them, veganism and animal rights is kind of like socks. They just don't care and they just never think about it. So, if you keep posting about it, it's literally going to be for them like, oh, like this person is just keep posting about socks. It's going to feel very similar. So jab, 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 right hook means create content that's first going to bring them value. So if your audience is friends and family, I would do things like just document my life, show other cool things that you're doing, show cool food that you're eating or whatever, and make posts so that people actually start watching your content regularly. And then once you provide a lot of value, once you have a lot of people who already follow what you do, then once in a while maybe post a thing that's vegan related. Or that's a great way, I think, to post slaughterhouse footage where then people are going to watch it anyways because they're used to watching your thing. And even though they might not like it, there's a much higher chance of them to keep consuming your content in the long term, because you're not just trying to get them with a thing that they don't want to see, but you're giving them a lot of what they do want to see.
Ryuji, just all you have to do is think about all the accounts that you unfollow, right? And that you stop looking at. For me, it's like people that just post pictures of their kids. Like, and I don't know them, I don't have a personal relationship. I'm like, I don't really care. To see a picture of your kids doing different things every day. So I typically I'm going to unfollow or whatever. So, but if they randomly posted other interesting stuff that provided me value, and then occasionally they posted that, I actually might care more. I might be like, oh, that's really cute. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, make your social media a landing page. So that's what I talked about earlier with building a house. But see, the thing is, every time you provide value to your audience using this jab, 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 right hook method, which is, by the way, I do it in a different way too, and you might be able to uncover if you look at my content. But the point is, what happens is that every piece of content is a new opportunity for people to check out what you do. So you can do really, really smart things with that, where, for example, what happens is that if you start posting and people actually like what they see, then at some point, they might decide to go stalk you and look at all your posts. And then if you have, here and there, something about veganism, then they might piece together the things. Or you can even do like really smart things like this. What I'm going to implement this like real soon, where you could do like, say like stories, on Instagram specifically, you do stories, say about something that's related to veganism and that explains everything about veganism. And then instead of having all your posts be about veganism, maybe do it like here and there, but then at the end of your caption, say something like, if you're interested in learning about this more, then check out my story highlights that's called this. And so what happens is that you provide a lot of value, and that creates many opportunities for people to eventually end up on that story highlights where you've laid out everything that you want them to see. So that's kind of like the second concept I want to talk about there. The third concept I already talked about earlier, clarify everything. Don't assume that people know. Like I said, it's not because you've said something a million times that the people in your life are going to, remember what you've posted. They're probably not going to remember. So for me, even every time I explain the vegan argument from a philosophical standpoint, I just explain all of it. Like, I just start from scratch. Every post that I make, I assume, like, even though, like I said, like I'm building the house, but each individual post, my caption and the way the post is, I don't assume that people know anything. I always start from scratch. And the last thing is, make it really, really easy. You want to make it easy for people to consume your content. You want to make it easy for people to follow your calls to action if you have a call to action. For example, I was like, probably a great post would be something like, instead of posting just slaughterhouse footage, if you want to post slaughterhouse footage, package it in a way where you have, for example, the first picture is like a picture of a cow, and there's an arrow that says, or it says like how cows should live versus how cows do actually live. And then people can swipe and see slaughterhouse footage. And then you can have a thing even after that, you can really go in detail with this, where it's like, say, a vegan burger. That way you solve all the issues. You're like, what? This is what a cow looks like. This is how they're treated. You probably think this is wrong. But then here, I'm going to give you a solution with that as well. So make it really, really easy for people to, consume your content, understand what you're talking about. And then if you have call to action, make it as easy as possible for them. Because, even though social media is really powerful, at the same time, because you're competing against so much stimulus, if you don't make it easy for people to understand what you're talking about and consume your content, they're just not going to consume it, or they're just, it's not going to hit them. So you got to make it like really.
I just want to top up one thing here as well. Something that I've learned from, I think I remember Melanie Joy talking about this, and the idea behind sharing sad footage versus graphic footage. So people are more likely to consume, non-vegans are more likely to consume and be affected by sad footage, as opposed to like the really gruesome, gory footage of like a knife going into an animal's throat. There's reasons behind that, really, I think really powerful reasons. And supposedly there's been studies as well that have been done on that, but it just kind of makes sense to me from my experience. So that's another thing. If you can think about sharing like emotional touching footage versus like shocking footage, it might also have a stronger impact packed into what you were saying, you know, if you present it in a smart way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because when you're sharing footage like that, that's emotional. You're like, you're sharing experience with people. A lot of times what I see people doing with graphic footage, and this is where it goes wrong, is point of view of making people wrong, being like, look at the horrible things that you're contributing to, and making it an argument or debate, you know, and yeah, I think that's where it goes wrong. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
If people have questions about that, we don't have a lot of time left for the presentation now, but the Q&A, we still have about 20 minutes left. So we can address that. If you have questions, more specific questions about the type of footage to share or slaughterhouse footage or whatever, throw it into the Q&A section and we'll address that after the webinar.
Okay, everyone's favorite section, how to deal with trolls. So the first thing I want to say about trolls is that there's a difference between people who have a genuine concern and people who are actually there to make your day worse. What I'm going to talk about here is people who literally come onto like vegan pages and their username is like vegan hater 24, and like they say things and you can tell that their whole purpose is to make your day worse. And the thing to realize about these people, because I've seen it where people get so caught up with this that they literally think about it for like an hour, 2 hours, half a day, a whole day, to think about it a week later. And you spend so much time, you know, thinking about this and figuring out how to answer that. And I'm like, you know, the first rule is I spend as little time as possible. So realize that those people are unqualified leads and they're probably in a bad place. They're people who don't want to hear about this. And they're people who like, think about like what kind of bad place you must be coming from to literally go on someone else's page and say something mean or say something to judge them or shame them. I mean, the concept of doing that is so foreign to me. I can never imagine myself doing that. So realize that those people are probably like in a really, really bad place, and like they're just, you know, they're just not your audience, and that's just what it is. The second thing though that I always balance that out with is taking responsibility. If you have a lot of people that are accusing you of certain things, especially this your friends and family, I think it's really important to realize this. If the people in your life that you care about, that you genuinely have good relationships with, starts being trolls or start putting comments and tell you to shut up or tell you stop shoving this down my throats, I think it's important for you to ask yourself, well, you know, yeah, maybe they feel attacked, but how is it that I'm creating that? How is it that I'm creating that situation? Very, very similar to actually in-person outreach. I know, Alex, you've talked about this as well in the past. So I think it's important for us to ask ourselves that question too. And then the third thing is I don't spend a lot. If I do answer, I don't spend a lot of time answering. If I do answer, I'll either answer something like very, 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 very nice. I'm always very nice to people. Like, I don't think it's because people are mean to you that you should be mean to them back. I think that's very immature and stupid. So when people are mean to me or people are trolls and I do answer, I'm like, you know, I might say something like, I don't know, like, I don't even think about this. That's the thing. But if I do answer, I'll answer something very loving and I'll come from a loving place because just like, why not? But I don't spend a lot of time on it. Or I'll do what Alex teaches if it's more like a genuine concern, like if people say things like, oh, but burgers taste good though, you know, I'll do like what Alex teaches to handle objections in kind of like a shortened way, because like, I don't know how you can still demonstrate these things, but I'll be like, yeah, I hear you know, like, you know, it's really important for me to enjoy my food as well, blah, 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 and I'll kind of go through that. But the main thing is I just don't spend a lot of time on it because I think it's ludicrous for us to spend more time on people who are trying to make our day worse than people who actually enjoy our content and who support us. I'm like, why am I spending more time answering trolls than I'm answering my supporters? That makes no sense.
Or creating content.
Or creating content, exactly. There's always an opportunity cost. You could be doing something that's so much more productive than trying to respond to this one person who's probably like just in some basement somewhere, like out to like get you and like doesn't want to listen to you at all. So, you know, that's that. And the last thing is forget about it as quickly as possible. Like, hey,
so I was just going to share a quick story. I had someone on my feed trolling me, and I was kind of like responding and giving them links to things, and they came back and said, "Oh, I just checked out the World Health Organization's like report on meat meat causing cancer. And he said, this might sound like bullshit, but I actually want to go vegan. And I was like, oh, that's great, and whatever. And then I kind of like said, I don't know, I said something like, obviously like reinforcing, that's great, good for you. Here's some documentaries you might want to check out. And then he came back and said, oh my God, you actually believe that? And he was like trolling me, right? And then my response was just like, oh, you tricked me, in a sad face with like a tear, So like just getting your ego out of it, and then just like, I don't know, I just feel like even if people read this after the fact or this person, I don't know, it don't let it get to you. And like I said, like forget about it. I kind of laugh at it and just let it go.
Like I probably get like more troll comments than like a lot of people here. And like, I can't think of a single one because I just forget them so quickly. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I just don't want to spend time like thinking about that. So I just really make an effort to, when I read it. And so like, sometimes I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes it does affect me. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why would you say that? But in my mind, I'm like, okay, forget about it. And then like 2 seconds later, it's like gone. It's like out of my mind. Like, I don't even, and I think that's the most important thing because, the way that we win against trolls.
Can I make a suggestion? We're running really, really late on time and we need to get to, there's 19 questions and there's 15 minutes left. So why don't I make a suggestion here? Your last point here is forget about the trolls. I hope that people don't forget about you and this presentation because it was fantastic. I want to let people know that I will send, for everyone that registered for the webinar, I'll send out an email with the slides. So I'm sure people were taking notes, but you'll have all of these slides as well. Ryuji, I also want to thank you so much for all of the time and effort that you put into building this presentation. I know that you had a lot more content and you had to like narrow it down, and even still we went a little over time, but there's just so much good content that I am sure that the people on the webinar appreciated it as much as I did. I also want to talk to people about the next slide. And if you've been on the AVO webinars before, you already know this. So if you can switch slides, Ryuji, I don't have control of the presentation. Yeah, thanks, bud. The way that this is possible is through donations. So all the services that AVO offers, whether it's the webinars, the workshops, the one-on-one leadership coaching, there's no price or no fee for them. It's based on gift economics, which means that people are able to contribute whatever they feel it's worth and whatever they can support. So those are the links for any support that you guys can give. As I mentioned, there's a lot of time and effort and cost even that goes into creating this content. So if you guys want to support it, if you want to see more webinars, please do. And if you can go to the next slide. Thank you guys. Thank you for attending. Those are the social media channels for AVO and for Ryuji. Please follow him if you're not. Please follow me if you're not. And we'll see you guys on the next webinar. So thank you guys. Take care.